The following QCCS Mackay Cutters Change the Game episode contains critical and confronting conversations that some listeners may find upsetting. Audience discretion is advised.
Change the Game, proudly brought to you by the QCCS Mackay Cutters.
Hi everyone, welcome to QCCS Mackay Cutters Change the Game Vodcast podcast. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that we're meeting on today, the Yui people of the Kulin Nation, and pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. The conversation today is around Real Mates Talk, and we're joined by three guests. We've got Michelle Borg to my left from Selectability. Hi Michelle.
Hi Mitch.
Dave Hackett from DGH and one of our major sponsors of Mackay Cutters. Welcome.
Thanks Mitch.
And John Manning, Mackay legend, ABC Tropical North presenter. Welcome, Johnny.
Good afternoon.
Probably before we start, I'm just going to also thank one of our other major sponsors, Tropical Exposure, who are behind the scenes. So we've got Amanda and Ben, who work with us at Mackay Cutters and do a great job, and I want to thank them for all their support, and also Dave, May, Tyler and Brendan behind the cameras, and they've been doing a great job. So thanks guys, thanks for your support. We'll jump into our conversation of Real Mates Talk, and I probably want to start with you, Michelle, and talk a little bit about how Real Mates Talk has begun.
Well, the initiative started in 2019 October. It's an arm of the Suicide Prevention Community Action Planning Group, which covers Mackay, Whitsunday and Isaac. So in our project work, it was clearly identified that sadly more men take their lives through suicide. So we worked for a couple of years with some major men's advisory groups on how we could address that, how we could start engaging men across our region, and that's where the initiation of Real Mates Talk stemmed from.
Yeah, right. So take us a little bit further on those organisations you engage with, and some of those conversations you had.
There was multiple conversations. So the SPCAP group is got major stakeholders. There's 17 representatives from across the region that feed in and feed out from that group to give us and address the issues that are happening across the region, that we discuss collaboratively how we can address those and work together. But on top of that, there was a lot of men's advisory groups across the region that was just men from all walks of life, from community. So we had people from barbershops, we had people from business, organisation, diesel fitters across the board, whoever wanted to be part of those conversations to feed in and advise and guide us what was needed. That's where we were taken.
Okay, great. It's very present, especially in Mackay. Is it broader? Is it gone broader than Mackay district Real Mates Talk?
Just Mackay, Whitsunday and Isaac, it covers, yes.
So it hasn't reached further than...
No, sadly, but we are being approached that people want it, and there's absolutely a need globally. Every human being, everyone wants to have that real conversation, but what we've established in the portals and websites that people get sent to on Real Mates Talk and SBCAP, it really only covers the local organisations and the services that are on the ground across the region here. But the values and the purpose of the Real Mates Talk itself obviously resonates with every human being.
Yeah,
it's relevant for everyone.
Yeah, so what is at the core of Real Mates Talk? And maybe we could go to Dave and John for some commentary around this too. Being men and working in Mackay community and working in Mackay, probably being touched by some friends who have gone through some tough periods. What is at the core of Real Mates Talk?
It is just that in the industry that DGH are in, well, it's predominantly a male industry, a male organisation. I have been touched with suicide in our workplace, as well as within my family group, and also with I've lost friends through suicide. So it's something very near and dear to me. So and groups such as Men's Talk and that organisations are really great to get the conversation going. That's in our organisation. We've got what we call an open door policy. So none of our offices have the door closed. Our employees can come and see us any time of the day. They've got access to our mobile numbers, our after work numbers, and so that's how we present to our employees that we're open for them to come and visit us anytime they want when they've got a problem, no matter how big or small it is. We can't. We tell them straight that we can't actually fix the problem. We're not trained to do that as such, but we can certainly put them in the right direction of great organisations that can do just that. And I think most of the time they just need a ear to listen, that will listen to them, and that's the biggest part of this Mates Talk, that people do listen and don't just brush them off.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think it's important that we have groups like this to ensure the conversation is now out there in the popular zeitgeist, and I think it empowers the person who's requiring some help to release themselves of the stigma attached to having these kinds of conversations. Because if you do have this kind of conversation, it's never the person you approach who's holding onto that stigma, it's the person who has the issue that's holding onto that stigma. So it's about allowing these guys to actually release themselves from holding onto that particular stigma and understand that it is a conversation that can be had out in the open. It doesn't need to be behind closed doors, and it's absolutely not any sort of indication or display of weakness as well. Because, as Dave said, I've been touched by suicide in my life as well, and up until it was very, very close to me. Up until that point, I probably considered it a weak option. But once you're actually that close to it, it's certainly not that. You get a very, very different view on it. And these conversations actually, suicide prevention is obviously the thing that's attracted me to this organisation rather than simply awareness. I think prevention's the key. But also you don't have to be at that breaking point to reach out for some help. There are many different levels of help that people require, and certainly men require in life. If we can nip these in the bud early and have these conversations and ensure that people are comfortable having these conversations, I think that's going to stand us in good stead to really turn that dial from where it is now and where it's been for quite some time.
Yeah, great. Michelle, Dave and Johnny are both ambassadors for Real Mates Talk. What's the role of an ambassador?
So there's 3 levels, obviously, to their choice on how they would like to contribute and be involved in the campaign. So one is just sharing a little bit of how they feel about suicide prevention, how they look after themselves. That gets shared out into community and on our social media portals. Level 2 is having those immediate conversations in your circles of work, place and family. Level 3 is more community engagement setting where they're capable of coming and advocating for what the conversations represent and the purpose of the campaign.
So obviously level 3?
Absolutely, yeah. And those a lot of the ambassadors live and talk this anyway. We're just putting a face to the name. They're well-known community members, and that's what's resonating across the region, that it's a local campaign with locally recognised ambassadors and locally recognised partners.
Yeah. So the level 1 questions that you mentioned, if we were to ask Dave and John some of them, and happy to provide a couple of those answers. So how they...
So they all get the same questions regardless of what level, and we check with the ambassadors what they're happy to share. So one of those questions are how they choose to self-care and look after their own mental health and well-being.
Yeah, I'm happy to start on that. I exercise. I'm a different human straight after a workout than I am before it. So for me, that's my I guess my critical few. That's one of my critical few. The other things would be I stay in constant contact with a pretty tight group of friends, and that's just via a standard group message where there's a check-in every day without fail. There's about 10 of us on it. There's a consistent check-in there, and if someone hasn't checked in for a couple of days, there's a few superfluous messages going around behind going, hey, have you heard from this guy or that guy? And then we reach out to him, and everything's usually okay. Oh, you've just been busy. So they're probably the critical few things that I do, and I also make sure that I carve out time for myself as well. So I take it, I guess, a pretty selfish approach to caring about myself, and whilst I've found throughout my life helping other people helps me the most, I also make sure that I carve out time for myself, that it might just be time where I'm just locked away doing nothing and alone with my own thoughts, but I make sure that there's time for that every day as well. And it's not, I don't have any sort of structured routine where it's written out or anything like that. When the thought grabs me, I just make sure I go and do it.
Yeah, I guess being in a business and that, you've got to switch off. You've got to have people you can talk to yourself that are outside your business. But being involved in a lot of the organisations such as we're speaking about this morning, they do help teach even myself, like different breathing techniques, and when the stress levels get a bit high, I revert back to them, and that seems to help. But as John pointed out too, it's being involved with other people and understanding their problems and helping them with that gives you a very high sense of achievement.
Yeah, so the next question I want to ask is the importance of being there for your mate, and probably knowing when to be there. And it's connects to what you mentioned before, John, about having that group and checking in, and just being aware if they're not present within your group. So let's probably talk a little bit further onto that if we can.
Well, I think just jumping in, I think that right now that particular side of things, in my experience, is better than it's ever been. And specifically with the people I have contact with, I ring up blokes and I'll say, just check in and see how you're doing, or send them a text, how you doing, and that happens to me as well. 5-10 years ago, that wasn't happening.
Taboo.
So I think we've actually just come to a point where we're a little bit more mindful in our day-to-day lives of checking in with others and receiving the check-in as well. And I don't know about you. I mean, the majority of my mates are guys I played football with at a pretty high level. So, we share a certain shared experience. So, it is quite comfortable for us to check in on each other like that. I'm sure in certain other areas it's not, but I think that's the dial we have to turn, is that if you're thinking about it, do it. If the thought strikes you, I haven't heard from Jeff in a while. Jeff, what's going on? How are you? Just checking in. That's all you need to do. It's like when you want to start exercising. If you've been a slug for 6 months, you just get up and go for a run. It's those first few steps you take. So that's always the hardest thing, is the first step. But once you do it, momentum carries you through it.
Don't wait for tomorrow.
That's right.
Yeah, and there are important days in the calendar that we have, is like an Are You OK day, and there are a lot of others out there too. There's a Real Mates, but every day is important that we are checking in. Does Real Mates Talk have a day and an event in the calendar that is?
No, they're forever expanding, they're ongoing, and it's very much what you just said, Mitch. It's an everyday conversation that we all hold responsibility for equally, and whilst we're talking predominantly men, it's every single one of us. The campaign's inclusive of everyone. We've all got mates, we've all got a heart centre, we all feel and we all hurt. The importance of having that conversation, realising when someone's not doing okay, how do we respond and reach in, but also encouraging those when they're not okay to reach out.
Yeah, that care factor is really important to the core of that. I was part of a group that got together at Mackay's solicitors not too long ago, and it was people from all over Mackay come to this event, and the purpose of it was to have these conversations and about mental health and well-being, and where the scale is for individuals, and the resources out there to use, and it was all men in the room, and it was pretty powerful. And I only realised I knew it was powerful at the time, but last week I ran into someone who was there, and we just got chatting about that, and it really hit home for that person of what we were talking about, and how important it was. And I think it spurred them on to continue having those conversations with his mates outside of that circle. So I think organisations like Real Mates Talk and the awareness of it and everything is working.
The ripple effect, it's so inspiring. The passion and support that we've got firsthand in our community, people are there, they want to help. And it's beyond the resources. We've got a multitude of resources and supports that are available on the ground, as well as your online helplines and apps like that. But fundamentally, like what the gentlemen are sharing today, it's that understated power of connection and engagement is what is the foundation, the core of what connects. It's the first initial step, like what John said, in connecting people. Yeah.
It was building up.
Edit point.
I wasn't having a go just.
Yeah.
I thought you had something to add.
I added as much as I could.
Did you hear it? He added it.
Very good. So this is not edited
Oh.
for everyone out there. So
It's real. It's raw and real.
It's really happened. I might be allergic to you, Michelle.
Not possible, Dave.
Just on that meeting you went to, Mitch. I mean, that's you said it was a room full of people, but that's not a big event, right? That's a pretty small gathering of people in the scheme of things. And you spoke about Real Mates Talk being Mackay, Whitsunday, and the Isaacs region. There's a line in a film called American Sniper. And his dad's teaching him how to aim. And he says, "Aim small, miss small." I think that's pretty important with this kind of thing as well, because sometimes there is a lot of it's a bit of a crowded space. A lot of this mental health and suicide awareness and suicide prevention. And I think just last weekend I spoke about on air 3 different events that were on the same day regarding all very much the same. I guess there's the same ideals and the same cause. So, having those meetings like that, as you said, the first step. That's you can't make a mistake by literally reaching out to someone and asking them how they are, or going around and knocking on a friend's door. You literally can't mess it up, So that whole piece about remaining in Mackay in this region, I think that's where the resource has to be, because this is a region where it has been identified as an issue, and yes, it can go global if it needs to be, but at this point in time, the resources are required here. And I think we need to be cognizant of the fact of the old saying that says charity starts at home. Well, this is...
Yeah, you're 100% right there, John, with what you're saying. And, the conversations years ago, you couldn't make the kind of conversations that you're making today. It would have been frowned upon. It would have been almost tabooed in a male construction type of business. But now I'm noticing that more and more are being open, and as we've alerted to, there's a lot of very, very good groups out there in the Mackay area and do a hell of a lot for suicide prevention and awareness, which is also as important. And I'm finding it within our business, you do know people's moods and swing their and it's really good when you do, and you can act on it, and you can say like what John said, you can just reach out to them and say, you don't see it yourself, mate, what's going on? And once they are happy to talk to you and comfortable with you, they really do open up, some of these blokes and women as well. And I think that's all. I could never ever ask the question unless I'd been involved with some of these great organisations.
yeah, and especially in your position at DGH, Dave, being general manager, and it's really important that you are setting that example, within your own workplace, so then people follow your lead and are able to have these conversations inside that environment.
Yeah, I'm very fortunate. I've got a great loyal workforce. We have up to 250 people working for us at any one time, and obviously you don't know all those people, but you've got good people that do understand their crews and their blokes. But with our main regular workforce in our workshops and that, I know the ones that are having trouble. I always make a habit of seeing them, at least trying to see them. It's not always possible to see them daily, it might be only weekly, but if I've missed getting down to the shop, and next thing someone will come to me door and say, "Hey, what's going on? I haven't seen you. You all right?" And that's how the conversation's been going now. So, and that really means a lot to me, because because I was checking up on them, now they're checking up on me because they haven't seen me for maybe a couple of weeks, So, yeah, it really flows on.
Yeah, great to hear. John, you could probably provide some context of how, back when you were playing footy, similar to, business, back when we were talking, 10 years ago, a bit taboo. Would have been the same in your playing days?
It wasn't taboo, it just wasn't thought of. It was never addressed, wasn't thought of. I just try and think if there was actually a welfare officer at the club back when I was at the Cowboys. There may have been, but I don't think they quite knew what their role was back then. This is 20 years ago. So I think that specific space has morphed a lot into what it is now, which is a lot higher resourced and a lot more supportive in that sense. So yeah, I don't think it was necessarily taboo. It just wasn't considered, and then when something's not spoken about and not considered, people are a little bit reticent to open up and have those conversations, and it's a very making no apologies for this is just an observation. It's a testosterone dominated environment. I mean, you're being asked to walk out onto that square and pick up a ball and run into 13 blokes who literally want to kill you. So there's got to be a bit of a hard exterior that you display in that environment, but it's just about when to turn that off and when to turn that on. So, yeah, I think the game's come a long way because I don't think those conversations were being had back in my day.
Okay. How do we recognise that someone needs help and support?
Yeah, well, if you've been with them for a long time, and you know them, and you know their moods, you know how their body language tells you if they're usually talkative, they're not talking. If they're usually very punctual and they're coming late, if they're not their jovial self, or they don't have a go at you when you walk past and a bit of a joke or something. Well, it usually, to me, that rings along. And a lot of times you go up and you have a yarn to them. What's going on, mate? And it might be something simple where they've got a little bit of an issue, or they've ran over their kid's bike coming to work and they've got the worried about that. But sometimes it's deeper than that.
Yeah, so withdrawal, but I'm also conscious of the fact too we don't label it always as that too, because it can be quite the opposite. And I've had experience in that with people that have shown the exact opposite to that and gone above and beyond who they normally would be and not being withdrawn. And there's been issues following that. So you've gone any further to add to that,
I
Michelle?
would agree with that, Mitch. Like, there's nothing that you can tick a box, a checklist. Like, it comes down to our gut sense, our intuition, because like you say, it's not always the obvious markers. Some people can make it look like they've got the white picket fence and the perfect life as such, but that
especially social media these days.
Yeah, absolutely. And play that facade, but internally there's absolute turmoil. So it resonates with what the gents are sharing, that it's when you sense something is not right or out of character or any form for someone, that's what's telling you something. So it's our responsibility to respond to that. If we're not equipped to respond ourselves, at least tell another person that could possibly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I can relate to that as well within our business. We had a young bloke a couple of years ago that succumbed to suicide. He was working night shifts on a local job. We understood he had issues, and we were keeping an eye on him, and we had good people around him that understood it. Unfortunately, he came home one morning. He was living with his parents, and they went and knocked on his door at 4 o'clock in the afternoon to get him up to make sure to get to work. He had a couple of guys coming to pick him up. They couldn't raise him from the door. They opened up and he'd taken his life. And I went and saw that family the next day, and also the guys that were travelling with him. I said, well, how was he yesterday morning when you dropped him off? And they said he was the best that ever. He was full of chat. He had a great night. He was really proud of what he'd done on the job. And unfortunately, it sounds like he'd already made up his mind that he was going to take his own life. And it is. It can be. You got to look for a lot of different signals.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think as humans we've got a pretty innate sense of danger. I think we've got to listen to that, understand that, as you said, It's not one way or the other. It's just a change, and you can generally pick if that change is a tad off or a tad weird, and then you can potentially take action. Yeah.
Yeah, well, let's dive into the talk then when we're having that discussion at the time, and where can we go with, or how do we finish the talk? I guess I want to understand too from you guys and get some discussions happening about that, and where do we end it with the talk, or how do we end?
I don't think the talk ever ends.
That's exactly what I was going to say. You don't stop the talk.
Yeah.
No, but what I'm trying to get at is
From a practical point of view.
Where do we leave it? Like, when if you recognise someone does need help, and you're having you're saying how are you, and you're getting down deep into it, and then we're getting to the end of the discussion is going to end at some point, and you're going to be removed from it and go off and do whatever you're going to do if you're at work or wherever it is. And you could be leaving that conversation and be really worried about this person.
Yeah, you can't leave things unsaid. And what I do, if because of the training and that I've got, I come straight out when someone's really down and you can see they're at risk. I ask the question, are you looking at taking your own life? And if they say yeah, which has happened on a few occasions, well, that's just the start of another conversation. It doesn't mean, oh, God, what am I going to do now? Or, oh, it's a shame, yeah, we'll go back to work. It's, rightio, well, we've got our own employee assistance program, but we've also got some great contacts from these other organisations. So it is then my job not to solve the problem, or not to find out the reason this guy's at the end of his wits and his tether. It's to make sure that he doesn't go through with what his mind's telling him to do, and that's when we go and seek. And I'll go with them, or if they want me to our EAP or to one of the organisations, and even our own GP, just somewhere where they can get professional advice. But you just, one conversation might end, but it just starts another conversation, and that's what you've got to make sure you're there for them. You can't solve their problems, but you can be there to listen to them, care for them. They know they've got someone they can talk to, and just give them the relevant help they need. And like I said earlier, 9 times out of 10, a lot of times they just, by talking to you, they realise that their problem isn't as big as they've made it out, that it's been allowed to take over for them. And they've also, they feel more at ease because they've actually. I say to them regularly, you've made the biggest step you're going to make is telling me about your problem, and everything from there is a lot easier, and it works out well in the end. But you've got to be there and make sure you follow that person right through till they can get professional help if they need it.
Yeah, and I guess it's a big burden to take on too, Dave. In your role, like having a lot of these conversations, and hearing a lot of people's stories. So it's important to look after yourself as well, following having these talks.
Yeah, well, again, we've got a great group with there's so many, like I said, so many different organisations. There's so many people that you can talk to, and they certainly help you out, and but when you do help someone out, it does make you feel pretty good inside, and that's sort of what gets you through.
Yeah, we're all here to connect and be with one another at the end, aren't we? It's no titles of brothers and sisters. We're all family, all one of the same. So, and whilst it's great to deepen awareness if you so choose and get that more levels of training, it's not absolute that you need that. We all sense when something's not right. And just by having being that first responder and connector, if we don't know what to say or what to do, at least tell someone else what you're observing, like what John gave the example of the group chat that you have, that they're all checking in with one another constantly.
No, that's good feedback for people, because not everyone will be trained in this
That's
area
right,
at all.
yeah.
But what are some ways for people to get further trained in?
Yeah,
in this
so
area?
all those levels of training options and how to start a conversation, tips, how to support yourself or another, they can find all that on our website, the Real Mates Talk website,
Which is?
www.realmatestalk.com.au. Yeah.
I don't. The training's fantastic, and the strategies and techniques and next steps are all very, very good, because it can be a complex situation you find yourself in. But I would probably hazard more often than not, just be a human being.
Yep.
That's the training you need.
Be there for them.
Just and to I guess take this a step back further again. We talk about prevention and things like that. Just be nice to people. Just treat people the way you want to be treated.
Yeah.
That's where the training starts.
Absolutely, and it is a silent killer. Like, I often use the analogy, like, if one of us fell over, collapsed on the floor, we're not going to walk out the room and leave you laying on the floor. Someone's going to aid the person that's on the floor while someone else responds and rings 000. It's the same.
Yes, well, it is very complex, as we know. Lots of people are dealing with lots of different stresses and anxieties about lots of different things. So, as what you mentioned, that it could be easy to see that I've had a heart attack or I'm going through a stroke, but it can not very, very easy to see that I'm going through something a lot deeper inside.
Yep.
That people are dealing with. So, yeah, I can't advocate enough how important the Real Mates Talk, I don't want to say campaign or initiative or awareness, because there are a lot of buzzwords, but the start of this through Selectability in the Mackay and district community, and having everyone connected into it, and especially ambassadors like Dave and John, being advocates for it. So keep doing what you're doing, and we're going to...
Yeah, I was just going to add on what Dave said. He said you might be able to fix the person's problems. Half the time they don't want you to. That's probably more than half the time. They just, you might be able to say, oh man, I understand, I've been through something similar, or I get it, You're not going to be able to fix their problems. But sometimes they just want an ear and a potentially a little bit of empathy. Right. Once again, just be a human being.
That's right.
Yep.
And I'm finding more and more with the younger ones, they come and tell you that they're feeling this way and that way. And, you say to them, that's all right to feel that.
It's not weird.
Yeah, it happens. It's, I've been around for 60 years. I still feel that way. So I don't think you're the only one, There's other people going through what you're going through. And I think when they understand that they're not on their own, it certainly helps.
Yeah, great. Well, probably, Michelle, do you have anything else that's really important for you to mention while we've got you on the microphone?
Long night.
Yeah.
I think it's great what the gentlemen have shared. I just can't encourage every single one of us more to speak up. It's the most courageous thing. There is, we're smashing, and I don't want to swear. I'm not a swearer. You guys can.
You're allowed to swear.
Just wouldn't sound right coming out of my mouth because it's just not innately natural.
Too much of a lady. That's
not what Phil tells me.
Let's eliminate the stigma. Let's just be there for one another, have the real conversations. And we know, and a lot of, especially the men have shared, how you going, mate? Yeah, I'm good. Nothing, it doesn't go any further than that. Start scratching the surface, start exploring and really attuning to your senses, what you're feeling, honour it and respond to it. We've all got equal responsibility to be there for one another. Yeah, and there's a multiple array of services and supports that people can access, but we are the first resource. We're the first responder. Yep.
Dave, John, you got anything further to add before we wrap this episode up?
What do you got, mate?
I don't know.
You got a little pearl you've been keeping in your back pocket.
Yeah, I think I've let it all out. Even me sneeze. So I don't want anything else to come out of. It's not supposed to.
No, I was just going to say I think it's a good initiative what you guys are doing. This is wherever this particular piece of content goes, that instigates conversation with one person, then job done.
Yeah, but it's whole community.
Yep.
We're just amazed at it's not owned by anyone as such. There's workers in the project, but it's the whole of community that are creating the ripple effect, and like it's a movement that's happening with the conversations, and they're igniting everywhere, which is so beautiful to see.
It's got to be, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, Michelle, Dave, and John, for joining us on this Change the Game episode of Real Mates Talk, and look forward to connecting with Real Mates Talk further as we proceed.
Thank you, Mitch.
All right.
Good on you, Mitch.
Change the Game. Proudly brought to you by the QCCS Mackay Cutters.